The word the house of God. The people of God are the ecclesia, not a church building or a system of worship. The called out ecclesia is the household of God. This brings us to a verse that is among the most misleading passages in the entire New Testament. But if I tarry long, that thou mayest know how thou oughtest to behave thyself in the house of God, oikos, which is the church, ecclesia, of the living God, the pillar and ground of truth. 1 Timothy 3:15. There's a very simple conclusion that Bishop Bancroft and King James hoped that the reader would make. House of God equals the church, equals a temple with its priesthood and ceremonies. The use of the term house of God, which was used exclusively of the temple in the Old Testament, was very crafty on their part. Although the Greek word oikos is often translated house or home, it most often refers to the occupants of a house, i.e. the household or family. Oikos speaks of a family, not a building, a household rather than a material house. If you look at its usage throughout the rest of the New Testament, you cannot avoid this conclusion. The literal translation of oikos is household, family, those who live in the same house. The Bible Library CD. There's a great difference between the houses that we live in and our households. There's an old saying, a house does not make a home. Neither does a church building make those who enter it the ecclesia of God. Our houses are dispensable, but our families are not. The important thing is the family. Let us advance a new equation. Oikos equals household of God, equals congregation of God, equals family of God. Oikos is always associated with family, not a material building or temple. It does not refer to the place or building where the oikos or family meet, but of the family itself, the household. Where, in this new dispensation, is God's house? The Scriptures make it quite clear that God does not dwell in temples made with hands. We, the body of Christ, are His temple made of living stones, Jesus Himself being the chief cornerstone as well as the foundation. See 1 Corinthians 3. If 1 Timothy 3:15 were translated properly, it would read as follows. But if I am gone long, you may know how you should conduct yourself among the household of God, His dwelling place, which is the congregation of the living God, the pillar and the ground of truth. Our own translation. Below are a few of the passages where the Greek word oikos applies to family rather than a physical house. Acts 10:2, a devout man and one that feared God with all his house, oikos, which gave much alms to the people and prayed to God always. Acts 11:14, who shall tell thee words whereby thou and all thy house, oikos, shall be saved? Acts 16:15, and when she was baptized and her household, oikos, she besought us, saying, if ye have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come into my house, oikos, and abide there. And she constrained us. Acts 18:8, and Crispus, the chief ruler of the synagogue, believed on the Lord with all his house, oikos, and many of the Corinthians, hearing, believed and were baptized. This brings us to the question of where the ecclesia of the first century met. Did they meet in temples? Did they meet in church buildings? Where did they gather? Where is the logical place for a family to meet? Where does your family gather on a daily basis? The family of God in the first century met in homes. Where else would a family gather? Here are some of the verses that bring this out. Acts 8:3, as for Saul, he made havoc of the congregation, ecclesia, entering into every house, and hailing men and women, committed them to prison. Romans 16:5, likewise, greet the church that is in their house. Salute my well-beloved Epaenetus, who is the firstfruits of Achaia unto Christ. 1 Corinthians 16:19, the churches of Asia salute you. Aquila and Priscilla salute you much in the Lord, with the church that is in their house. Colossians 4:15, salute the brethren which are in Laodicea, and Nymphas and the church which is in his house. Philemon 1:2, and to our beloved Epipha and Archippus, our fellow soldier, and to the church in thy house. Acts 12:12, and when he had considered the thing, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying. With the exception of Solomon's porch, where the early believers gathered to hear the apostles teach, and which was available to them for only a short time, there is no mention of a routine gathering place other than their homes. How I didn't shrink from declaring to you anything that was profitable, teaching you publicly and from house to house. Acts 20:20, WB. Paul lists two primary places where he taught, in public and in homes. In all of the New Testament, there is not one mention of Paul or any other apostle teaching or preaching in a church building. In all of the New Testament, there is not one mention of Paul or any other apostle teaching or preaching in a church building. This came much later as the full apostasy of the church started to take hold.